Okay guys, here is part 2. And what's important about this video is not only am I going to do 2 more graphs, but at the end of it, you're going to see the actual assignment I need you to try to do. And what you're going to do is you're going to print them out, work them out, take a picture, send them back to me. Your only alternative to this, of course, is do Khan Academy. So, or both. That's even better. Here we go. So guys, this is number 2 of a worksheet I made up for you guys. Okay. And we're just going to do it here so you don't have to worry about doing it again. But on number 2, how we're going to graph this again is we're going to make a table. Remember, our x is really theta now. Theta is what we usually use to represent degrees. And again, let's do this at least in, you know what, let's do it in 3 chunks. You ready? Let's do sine of theta since that's so damn easy to do. And then we'll do 1/2 of sine theta. In other words, we're just going to take half of it because that's what that 1/2 is going to do. And then finally, we're going to take 1/2 of the sine. And as you can see right there, we're going to add 2 to it. So the first thing I want you to understand is this right here is really 1/2 sine theta plus 2, using the commutative property, right? And that's why. So that's what we're going to graph eventually. So let's get started. First of all, what do I use for theta again? I use the 90s, right? We know the 90s of theta. We're going to memorize the multiples of 90s of sine, right? And so here we go. We know, for example, we're going to use 0. Then we're going to use 90. We're going to use 180, just counting by 90s. We're going to use 270 and 360. Now, guys, I'm not going to bounce back and forth. You ought to have these memorized by now, like me. So, we're going to do sine of theta. Sine of 0, of course, is 0. The sine of 90 is 1. The sine of 180 is 0. The sine of 270 is -1. The sine of 360 is 0. Now, let's just do half of sine theta. Half of this, of 0, is still 0. Half of 1 is 1/2. Half of 0 is 0. Half of -1 is -1/2. Half of 0 is 0. Now we're going to finally get to y. We're going to take 1/2 sine theta, which we have here. We're going to add 2 to it. So when I add 2 to that, I get 2. Add 2 to this, I get 2.5, or 2.5. Add 2 to this, I get 2. Add 2 to -1/2, I get 1 1/2, or 1.5. And finally, when I add 2 to 0, I get 2. So, let's graph our thetas with our y's. So we're going to do 0 with 2. Boom. We're going to do 90 with 2.5. 90, 2.5. Boom. 180 is 2. Right there. 270 is 1.5. Right there. Finally, 360 is 2. Right there. And if I connect it with a curve, guys, notice it's not as tall. Why? Well, first of all, let's talk about the midline. Do you agree? I can split it in half right here. That's our midline. Where is our midline shown in the equation? It's whatever we add or subtract to the equation, the function. That plus 2 means the whole graph you see slid up 2 spaces. That's why the midline, instead of being here at 0, like it normally would be, it's up 2. So our midline is therefore y equals 2. Now, notice, guys, from the midline, it just goes up a little bit. Over here, it goes down a little bit from the midline. Those are your max and min values, right? How much is that quantity? Well, that quantity is, if you look at it, from 2 to 2.5 is 1/2. Notice, where can we see it in the equation? the coefficient of the sine function, right? Right at the beginning. So we know our amplitude, amp for short, is 1/2 or 0.5. We already know the midline is plus 2, positive 2. Okay? The period again goes from here to here. That's one full cycle. It's 360. All right, let's do one more. So what am I going to do again, guys? We're going to make a table starting with our x, which is really theta. Let's do it in 3 steps again. We're going to do sine of theta. Then we're going to times it by 3. So 3 times sine of theta. Finally, to get to y, we're going to also add 1 to it. By the way, do you agree this is really 3 sine theta plus 1 using commutative property again? So once I take 3 sine theta and add 1 to it, I'm going to get my y. Again, what are we going to use for theta? Our 90s, right? 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. Let's do our sine theta. Sine of 0 is 0. Again, how do I know? I have these memorized, but again, sine of 0 is 0. Sine of 90 is 1, and so on. So that's 1. That's 0. That's negative 1. That's 0. Now, let's times by 3. 0 times 3 is 0. 1 times 3 is 3. 0 times 3 is 0. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. 0 times 3 is 0. Finally, let's add the 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. 0 plus 1 is 1. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. 0 plus 1 is 1. Now we can graph our thetas with our y's. So 0 is 1. 90 is 4. 180 is 1. 270 is negative 2. 360 is 1. So if I connect them in order with a curve, guys, I get this. Notice how this one is much taller than this one was, right? Look how short of a wave or small of a wave that is, right? Compared to this one. Now, let's start with the midline again. Do you agree? I can split it in half right here. I already knew ahead of time that midline is going to be whatever I add to my sine function. My midline, mid for short, is y equals 1. Notice, guys, our amplitude from the midline, the peak is right there. That's the max value. From 1 to 4 has a value of 3, right? Just like when I went down to the minimum value, that value or amount is 3 or negative 3 if you want to use direction. But the whole point is, I know my amplitude, amp for short, is simply 3. But you should have known that because that's at the beginning of the sine function. The amplitude is always the coefficient of the sine function. All right? And of course, our full cycle went from 0 to 360 again. So 360 is our period. Okay? All right. So guys, here's the deal. You have 4 graphs I want you to try. Remember, guys, make the table. If you want to do it in multiple steps, just be careful at one time, right? Just be careful. You know you're right if you get a nice wave, by the way, most likely. Now, here is the first 2. Again, either write it down or print it out. Here is the second 2. Okay. Now here's another way you could do this worksheet is you could just maybe print this out. Okay. Take a picture of it, print it out, and use that instead of these. Okay. It's a little bit bigger squares and everything, but obviously you need 4 of these. So print it, take a picture, print it out twice. And once you get, guys, once you get whatever the I'm going to look for the table, get your table done right. I want to see the graph and the curve and all that good stuff like I did in the video. Including, I want you to talk about the amplitude, the midline, and the period. Okay? And you get that on your paper, take a picture, you send it back to me. Like some of you have been doing, like Anthony Solis has been doing a really good job of that. Keep that going, by the way, Anthony. Okay? And there is an alternative assignment to Khan Academy, guys. All right? And I will be easy on you. I'm not going to do any extra alternative worksheets. How about the rest of this week? Next week, I'll probably give you 2 of them, however. Okay? Just a little heads up. I'll see you around.